Hello and welcome to Central Florida Salute YouTube, and I am Bob Peters, and I am at Okahumpka 4273 in beautiful Okahumpka. And my guest today is an Army veteran. He was an MP, am I correct? Andy Lucchini.
That's it.
I said it right?
Yes, sir.
Not bad for a Polak. Andy,
Yes,
I met you several years ago. You gave me your phone number and everything, and out of the blue, I picked it up and found it and said, "Hey, I remember you. You wanted to do a show." I said, "Well, come on in." So, and here you are.
Here I am.
So, where are you living now? You were born in New York, right?
I was born in the Bronx and got drafted back in 1966, October. And I've had a lot of uncles in World War II. My father was in World War II. I had one uncle that went to West Point, which I'll tell you a little bit about later because there's a connection with Vietnam. And a couple of cousins were in Vietnam too at the same time. And I went over there and they stationed me, they put me in Saigon as an MP.
Well, first, where did you go to basic?
Oh, basic, excuse me. I went to South Carolina. It was Fort Jackson. We slept in tents. We were the only company, F Troop we called ourselves.
Yeah.
We slept in tents and everybody else had barracks. And then I took AIT in Fort Gordon, Georgia, MP school. Went home for 30 days and then I had to go to Vietnam.
Did you volunteer for an MP, or did they say that?
It was one of my third choices, believe it or not. They ask you for 3 choices when you join.
Yeah.
And they told me I put down mechanic, I put down cook, and I put down MP. I never expected either one. But I wound up at MP and I was happy, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very happy, yeah.
So you drafted, you did 2 years. You said.
2 years,
Yeah.
a year in Vietnam, and I came back to Fort Detrick, Maryland, which is biological warfare, top secret. And it's still going on now, but that's where they take care of all the chemical situations, making chemical bombs and studying chemical bombs of other countries so we can be prepared.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I know when I talked to you, we were going to talk about Vietnam, and you were over there during the tent offensive.
Yes, sir.
And that was quite the deal. I mean, this is for the kids who don't know, this is when North Vietnam decided they were going to go after everybody.
All-out attack.
All-out attack all over the place. And it was huge. So tell us a little bit about your story. I know you have a story you want to tell us about. Where were you at during the tent offensive, and what happened?
Okay, about 2 weeks before, we got notice that the BC in North Vietnam was going to do something. We didn't know exactly what. We didn't know the extent of it, how big it was going to be either. So 2 weeks before, we were told we were on high alert. We were put on 12-hour shifts for 13 days and 1 day off. I was off that night. You had to go to sleep in your full uniform, take off your belt, your gun was next to you in your bed, full ammo. You could take your shoes off, and that's how you went to sleep for 2 weeks. That offensive hit that night. I was woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning with my roommate. We lived in a hotel. It was called the Sholan. It was called the Capitol Hotel, Sholan section of Saigon.
Excuse me.
I heard noise outside, but
excuse me.
Yeah.
You said you were in a hotel?
Yes, sir. Not the
Now,
Ritz.
you know what? You know how many times I hear about Air Force guys who lived in a hotel? Now I got an Army guy that lived in a hotel.
Anybody in Saigon lived in a hotel.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, they had the Imperial Hotel, the President Hotel, and so on and so forth. We were in Sholan, which is the Chinese section of Saigon. I heard noise outside. I heard the bombs. I saw a lot of lights going on. And they woke us up at 3 o'clock, about 3:10 exactly. And they says, we got to go. Got dressed real fast. Got out. They took us, went by Jeep, a lieutenant and myself and my roommate, which I'll explain a little bit about later. We went out to Tan Son Nhut Air Force Base. The Air Force billets was under attack.
Mm-hmm.
They were being hit from the cemetery, which is in back of the billets. So we got there to help out. There were some MPs there already. And we exchanged some fire with the VC in the cemetery. The next thing I know, the lieutenant and my partner are gone. They left me there. They took the Jeep and left me there. They heard through the vine that the Saigon embassy was being under attack.
Uh-huh.
So he took off with the lieutenant. I got left there. So after I had a chance to get away, I grabbed the vehicle, hopped in the vehicle, and I ran over to the embassy. But I got there during daylight. The embassy got hit around 4:30 in the morning. It was still dark out. And I got there probably 5:30, 5:45. It's just getting light. What actually happened is, what I have here is the actual account of what happened. Not what the media told everybody, not what the televisions told everybody. This is the actual account, minute by minute and hour by hour. So what happened was the VC attacked the embassy. They blew 2 holes in the wall. There were 2 Marine guards at every hole, right behind the kiosk. They got hit and they were wiped out. We lost 21 MPs in and around Saigon.
Wow.
We lost another 25 that were on a deuce and a half, 2.5 ton truck. They drove into enemy fire into a billets, not knowing that there were mines planted, and they never got off the truck. It's a shame, but it happens. I mean,
roadside bombs.
We lost a total. I would say we lost a total of 42 MPs that night.
Wow.
So the firefight took Saigon. They were at the racetrack. At the racetrack, they planned for a year, burying everything they could, ammunition. They had a triage down there below the racetrack. The racetrack was closed.
But what kind of racetrack is this? What are you talking
They
about?
had a Saigon horse racetrack.
Oh, horse track.
That was not used for years.
Right.
The grass was growing, elephant grass was
Yeah.
growing. The VC dug under the racetrack, unbeknownst to anybody, because nobody ever went there. They had a hospital, a triage down there to treat their wounded. They also buried ammunition in the cemeteries. They dug holes in front of and they put their ammunition down there. So they were all prepared. We knew something was coming, but nobody knew how big. I guess you can relate to World War II when they hit Pearl Harbor. Roosevelt knew something was going to happen, but nobody knew it was going to be that big. So that's the same thing happened to us. So there was fighting going on for probably 3 weeks till everything settled down a little bit. But as an MP, I had other duties, accident investigation, along with the combat. And then you got GIs a little bit out of line. They get drunk and it's stabbings, just like a regular policeman. But to get back to the combat, it went on for about 3 weeks, the Tet Offensive. And then I heard they did it again in May, but I left in March of 1968. But they did another attack in May. I wasn't there. But,
Yeah, from what I read, I mean, I wasn't there, but when I read that it was multiple attacks all over, and we beat them back. Every one of them, we beat them back. So, and now what do you got there? There's an interesting
magazine. This is a
magazine.
Life magazine from February 9th, 1968. And it shows a few pages accounts of Vietnam. Here's one of the prisoners we caught. There were 20 in the embassy, VC. We killed 18. We captured 2 of them. Let's see what I put it. It is. I had it marked and I lost it. We'll get it. Yeah, I'm sorry, I had it marked. Okay, this is my unit. All the action that went on, and I'm right here. This is one of the openings that they opened, and the Marine guards were killed. And we were there just to keep that open from coming out, so they wouldn't run out. Because I got there late. I got there 5:30, and all the action was already going for an hour. Am I going to go home? Am I going to make it? Am I going to get back alive? And I can't see on the other side of the wall, so my order is just to stay there with the other 2 guys. Make sure nobody comes out. And we went in eventually. And what I have here is a Time magazine video that I bought online. I didn't know what to expect. It's a 3-volume thing. This one is volume 2. It's all about the Tet Offensive. Now the reason when I looked in here, I didn't realize that the press was actually in the embassy taking a lot of pictures. And it's right here in this video. When I mentioned my roommate, his name was Paul Healy. He was from Massachusetts. He was a volunteer from 101st Airborne to come help the MPs in Saigon. Had a little Audie Murphy in him. So he was my roommate, and when we went to Townsend Air Base, I was scared. Because I said, this guy's looking for action. I'm just looking to save my life. He's looking for action. But there's a story that a lot of people, if you know what goes on with fish stories, I caught a fish this big.
This big.
Yeah, right, baloney. But in here is the actual thing, what he did. He killed 5 VCs himself out of the 20. He got wounded, and there was a captain on the 2nd floor that ran out of ammunition. There was a VC that chased up the steps, was going upstairs to the captain, and my buddy, my roommate, Paul Healy, threw a .45 weapon, fully loaded, up through a 2nd floor window. Now, it sounds Hollywood to most people. That's why the proof is here. It's all on tape, and he got right through the window, saved the captain's life. The captain killed the VC coming up the steps. He wound up with a Distinguished Service Award, which is the Silver Star. But he was a good roommate. I mean, scared the hell out of me, but...
Good guy to have around.
Oh, tell me. Yep. And, well, there's a lot of stories about Vietnam. I mean, I could tell you, after the Tet Offensive, there was an 11 o'clock curfew.
Yeah.
So we were put on joint patrols, which means one American MP, one Australian MP, one Korean MP, one Vietnamese MP, and one Vietnamese policeman for the language barrier and the legal system. Now, we drive around the night shift, all of us. As soon as there was gunshots or an explosion, the Vietnamese policeman and the MP ran. They left the Korean, myself, and the Australian in the Jeep, in the big Jeep. It was funny at the time, but I mean, that's two we could have used maybe.
Yeah, I wouldn't
language
think it's funny when my help is
language
yeah,
barrier, you know.
yeah.
But the Australian had me laughing all the time. I mean, with their bloody jokes and all that, I was cracking up. It was a good duty, a very good duty. And of course, what you hear sometimes about the killing of the VC and the torturing and all that, the Koreans were bad. The Koreans had their helicopters. They would take 3 VC up in the air, and they would tell them to stop talking or else they would throw them out the helicopter. And they threw 2 out. The 3rd one started talking. So that was interrogation to the Koreans.
The Koreans, they had a being the rock Koreans. They were one tough bunch of.
That was part of their interrogation.
Yeah, yeah. They didn't. You know, I've heard of them where they had to take down a couple of buildings. They just went in there physically, without any hammers or anything, just knocked it all down. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and we, as a military policeman, we had to go house to house, looking for the VC, fish them out. Obviously, they look like every other citizens. It's hard to, if they're not dressed in a uniform, which they weren't, you never know who they are.
Yeah, you know, and I've heard a lot of stories about that. I heard a story about how some guys would go to the barber shop and there'd be an attack, then all of a sudden the barbers are gone. And
that's another funny story with me. The first time I went to a Vietnamese barber shop, they had the straight razor, and they shave you. It kind of scared me a little bit because I don't know who this guy is.
That's right. You never know who the enemy was.
My mind was going in all different directions. But turned out he was one of the good people.
Yeah. Well, there's good people in all groups. So the Tet Offensive, you were there. How long did that fighting go on? For a week? Three weeks.
3 weeks, yeah. The embassy was over in a few hours, but it went on 3 weeks.
Yeah. And you were all over the place then?
It was total destruction. And some of our planes had to bomb most of the city. It looked, one strip of shoreline looked like I'd say about 3 or 4 football fields. Everything was knocked down, houses, everything. But it just looked like an open field. They used to have homes there.
Yeah, from what I understand, after the Tet Offensive, the opinions of the war kind of changed where they wanted us out of there. You know, the American people didn't want anything else to do. That's when they all started with the burning the draft cards and all that stuff.
It was also the first televised
conflict
or war, whatever you want to call it.
So America wasn't ready for this.
No.
No.
Not politically either.
No. No.
It was way out of whack.
So you were running around all these different areas and everything. How long did you stay in country?
I was there from middle of March '67 to the middle of March '68. Did my year and got out. And one story I want to tell you: after the Tet Offensive, no military personnel was allowed to leave country for any reason.
Really?
So I had a MP in my unit. He was the newbie. His father died in Chicago. The commanding officer would not let him go because that's his orders. So luckily, that night, I was guarding General Creighton Amber's house. 2 people on a general, and other buildings was just 1 person. But that's part of our duty too. We did the watching generals' houses, security. Now, I had to do something. I was scared. I thought I'd get busted. I thought I'd get reprimanded. As soon as the sun came up, I knocked on the door. The general's butler, cook, answered the door. He says, "How can I help you?" I says, "I have to speak to the general." He says, "What's the problem?" I says, "We got a GI in my unit. They won't send him home. His father died in Chicago." He says, "Well, I'll ask the general if he wants to see you." I'm there shaking. My heart's going. Pop, pop,
You don't
pop,
walk
pop.
up to a general, yeah.
This is General Westmoreland's replacement. He's in charge of the whole situation.
Yeah.
He comes out in his robe. He's probably eating his breakfast or whatever. He says, "How can I help you?" I says, "I got a GI that's with me," and I says, "His father died in Chicago, and they won't let him go because of the rules and regulations." So I started talking to him. He says, "Hold on a second." He came back with a piece of paper. He wanted his name and everything, where he is. I said, "Can I tell you something, General Ravens?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "Do you remember my uncle? He was in your class at West Point." I said, "Thomas Cullen." He said, "Oh, yeah."
Really?
And it was
Small
like
world, huh?
it was like my heart dropped. The beats dropped a little bit. I felt a little safer talking to him now.
Yeah.
So we spent about 5 minutes talking about my uncle. He says, "You go back and tell that guy to get dressed. He'll be on the next plane." So sometimes you have to go above the chain of command. And I was scared, but I had to do it for him.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, a lot of people, I interview a lot of veterans, obviously, from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and modern day warriors. I've interviewed them all. And when you start looking at military history, you know, like in World War II, it ain't over till it's over there. And these guys would go away, and the family had no idea if they'd ever coming back, where they were, or anything. And then you start looking at the survival rates, you know, with the Korea coming out with the mass units, and Vietnam, you had the helicopters getting you out of there. But one thing I remember when I was over there, and you kind of always wanted to get a letter, you know. And if you got a box of cookies, you were the most popular guy there.
Yep.
But you didn't have that connection. Like nowadays, they have their own little phones, and they can go on the computer and they can talk to their families back home and everything. We couldn't do that.
No,
we didn't have anything like that. Yeah, and it was like.
And the cameras.
Yeah.
You had to send the way to get the film developed, remember?
Yeah.
You couldn't do it right on the spot.
Yeah, it's amazing how things have changed, you know, with the computers nowadays, and hooking you right up to your family so you could say goodnight to your kids if you wanted to, whatever. Back then, they didn't even know where you were, especially during World War II and World War I. But, yeah. So, what other experiences did you have there? Did you?
In Vietnam?
Yeah.
Well, the 11 o'clock curfew, I mean, we had to clean out the bars at 11 o'clock, the GIs.
Well, that had to be fun.
As far as the combat situation, Saigon was like any other city. There was always attacks on our hotel. I lived on the 5th floor, which was the top floor at the time. When I got there, it was nice outside. There was a nice little patio outside.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's all full of holes. Got shot up one night. We had a sniper across the street. It was a building that was being remodeled, a brick building. And there was only 2 windows on the side of the building facing us. We didn't know where the sniper was at first. And we all manned our windows. We're shooting at everything that moves. And finally we found out where the sniper was. Now the 101st Airborne came with an APC. And a guy jumped out with the M80, M79 grenade launcher. You familiar with that?
Yeah, no, but
Yeah.
I can
A
imagine this.
little shotgun that shoots a grenade.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, the M79 grenade launcher actually came into service in 1961. So that means that it was ready to go by the time we were doing combat in Vietnam. And of course, this was the 40 millimeter grenade launcher precursor to the M203. How does it work? Super simple. You push that lever, it opens up, you load it just like your breech loading shotgun. Drop a 40 millimeter grenade in there, close it, you've got a tang mounted safety, forward to fire, put it up in your shoulder, and bloop. Right up front here, we have a leaf or a ladder sight, which allows you to shoot out to 400 meters. Now, some people would say 400 meters is stretching it, but easily between 1, 2, and 300 meters. Now, what could you shoot out of this? And a gunner could carry frag, and they obviously would carry fragmentation grenades. But they would also carry smoke grenades, they would also carry flares and pop-ups, which made the M79 gunner very versatile as a soldier. Now, how were these constructed? Again, like World War II guns, they were made of a lot of steel and hardwood. Hardwood stock, solid steel. The empty guns weighed around 6.7 pounds. Now, you say, that's weird. Isn't that upside down? The reason that this is designed, the stock, because if you're going to shoot a grenade beyond 100 yards to, let's say, maybe 350, you're going to have to line it up, and you could line up this sight to shoot all the way out to 300 or 400 yards. This is me lining up a 300-yard sight, hence the reason the stock is designed like that. Of course, it has sling swivels in the back and in the front so that you could sling this thing up and carry it.
He took 2 shots at that window. He missed the first one. The second one went through the window. When we got there, there were 2 burnt to a crisp. But they held us down for an hour and a half. But we didn't know where he was.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're getting shot at until we found out where. I mean, it was another good thing the hunt first came, because we only had one way out of our hotel. That was the driveway and the front door. We had no back entrance. So we were trapped.
Yeah.
Every time we tried to leave with a Jeep, they'd shoot at us.
And what else did you bring here? Did you?
Let me see. Well, this is the memorial at after it was all over, the GIs, MPs, Westmoreland Memorial. Yeah. And what else did I got here?
You know, I used to do school programs up north in Connecticut, and I used to go in and ask the kids about the different things, and you know, you'd stump a lot of them. You know, I used to have a lot of fun with the kids, with the girls. I'd have a picture of an airplane, and you know, with the boy, I would show them the picture, and they wouldn't know that's, you know, a B-17. But then when I showed it to the girls, on the back of the picture, I had B-17. So I said, "What kind of plane is this?" And the girl go, "Oh, that's a B-17." I had a lot of fun with it. But one kid amazed me one time. I started talking about things that were going on. He turned out it was Westmoreland's grandson. So he knew his stuff, you know. But,
This is a certificate that got mailed to me from General Westmoreland. It's for performing during the Tet Offensive. All the MPs got, anybody else involved with it. So it's something to hold on to.
oh, certainly is, yeah. Yeah, he was quite the man.
Yeah.
So you were fortunate enough never to get wounded, right?
Never got wounded, but I spent 7 weeks in Yokohama Hospital. I picked up a virus. It was a Epstein-Barr, you know, the mononucleosis virus. And
I don't know, but
I
I
spent
think it
7
worked.
weeks in Tokyo. Not Tokyo, yeah, Yokohama, excuse me, Yokohama. It was a naval hospital. Now, I thought I was going home.
Mm-hmm.
Then I heard rumors anybody goes to Yokohama is going back to Vietnam. I thought I was on my way home because they packed all my stuff up
Yeah.
and sent it back to my mother back in New York.
So you thought you were going back
I
to
thought
Vietnam?
I was going home in August.
And where did you go?
I went back to Vietnam.
Wow.
A different unit. I was in the B company. I went to the A company with the same hotel. They had moved from the presidential to the back to the shoreline. So I almost had the same room again. But I spent 7 weeks away from Vietnam. I was in the hospital, yeah.
Yeah.
I had 105 fever at one time in the Saigon hospital. They thought they were going to put me in an ice bath. What happened was they put a whole bunch of bags of ice cubes around my bed. And I got a visit from the prosecutor from Perry Mason. I don't remember his name. Anybody remember his name? The prosecutor?
You mean the actor?
Yeah. He came to visit me.
You said you had one funny story you'd like to tell.
Yeah, part of the police work before the Tet Offensive obviously was regular police work. I mean, if this is a deceased person, we have to check it out. We have to get the ID, we got to collect the jewelry and next of kin and all that stuff. So we get sent to the Imperial Hotel. No elevators. French hotel, spiral staircases, all the way up to the 5th floor. It was a warrant officer had died of a heart attack.
Oh.
So we didn't know what was happening. We just heard deceased. I didn't even know he was a military man. So we get up there, there's 3 of us. We get upstairs, how are we going to carry him down? So we took our belts off. We put him on a military stretcher, which you know is a little wobbly. We tied our belts to hold him down. And the sad but funny part was rigor mortis had set in. And he was in the baby position, the knees. And so we put him on like that. We tied him down real tight. And as we're coming down the steps, we dropped him 3 times.
Did you get to see a USO show at all when you were over there?
Yes, I saw Bob Hope, actually. I was in backstage. I was backstage with Bob Hope and, God, I can't remember her name now.
I saw
The one that was in 100 Rifles. The
I
actress.
don't know that one. I saw Bob Hope with Anne Murray, who sang Snowbird.
And Margaret.
And Margaret was there a lot, yeah. And Johnny Bench showed up.
Raquel Welch, excuse me.
Oh, Raquel Welch.
Yeah, I was backstage that night at the U.S. show, Longman. It was December of 1967, yeah. I got lucky. Snuck backstage, yeah.
I never saw Raquel Welch.
I was in uniform, that's why I got away with it.
Yeah. I saw the Gold Diggers remember the Gold Diggers from Dean Martin?
Yeah.
I saw them. I got some photos at home.
Chris Noel from the bikini movies, the beach bikini movies. She showed up once. So a lot of celebrities.
You did your year,
Yep.
and I gather you didn't re-enlist.
No, sir. I couldn't wait to do 6 more months and get out.
Yeah.
So when they sent me to Fort Detrick, Maryland.
What'd you do?
Biological warfare, MP work, guard the front gate, ride around the post, make sure everything's all right. Security, technically top secret. What I mean by top secret is nobody, absolutely nobody gets through the gate without ID. We had a 3-star general visit in a limousine. He was in the back seat, his driver was in the front. He says, this is 3-star general so-and-so. I says, I hate to tell you this, but you have to go into the office over there, make a right, go into the office and get an ID. He said, you didn't understand me. This is 3. I says, I'm only following rules. The general said he's doing the right thing. Let's go.
Wow.
And this is another funny
That could have been a career move.
It's another funny story coming up.
Okay, I'm ready.
After you get out of Vietnam, you get a little crazy. You let your hair grow.
Yeah.
You don't shave. You get a little out of the military realm. We had a guy from Queens. He was working the IDs. He had let his hair grow down to his neck. And he was working the IDs. And the general went in there, because I followed him. And he was in the back working on the files with his back turned to the general. And the general says, ma'am, could you help us? He picked up his hair and went like this. He got demoted.
Oh, yeah.
But
I'm sure he
that's the
did.
stories you hear. I mean, they're real. They just
Yeah.
told Vietnam goodbye, I'm done.
Well, near the end of my tour, I did 4 years, and I was overseas, and I had let my sideburns go, and so did this other guy who I worked with, and we were putting together a resume, so when we got out, hopefully we'd find a job, and I got there, and some officer, colonel, he kind of went to little bunkers, Go back to your shop and report to your officer. I says, yes, sir. My friend says, what are we going to do? I says, well, we came out for lunch. We're going to lunch. They're going to chew us out. Let's go have lunch first. I got back there, and there was a tech sergeant from the South. Damn, Pete, I know it was you. I knew it was one of you. And I says, yeah, well, I was 2 days away from getting out of there anyway, so I didn't care.
I had a crazy group in Maryland, Fort Detrick. They were a little They could have just got rid of him, saved a lot of trouble, but they got pretty wild.
Yeah.
Pretty wild.
So Andy, you got out. I see that you give me this little card here that you do some comedy. What did you do when you got out besides go a little crazy?
I had some odd jobs, and then by the time I was 37 years old, I said, I got to get a job and a pension. So I took the city test. I took policeman, which I really wanted. I took the sanitation and the fireman's test. The city went bankrupt in 1975, if everybody remembers. All the tests were frozen. The last test was given in 1968. I was in Vietnam, so I missed that test. So what happened was, took the test in 1976 or 77. I took the test. They didn't call me until 1984. It was a sanitation. It wasn't the police.
Wow.
And I wound up with a nice pension after 20 years of the sanitation. And I was a supervisor after 3 years, so I only worked the truck a very little bit of time. And we fought snow in the city. It was our job to clean the highways. And a million stories in New York City, like they say, 8 million stories in New York City.
Yeah.
But the one thing I'm proud about is when I moved down here to Florida in 2004, I was golfing a lot, of course. I worked on the golf course at Arlington Ridge, Leesburg. I worked there for 6 years when they first opened. And then I found out that the sheriff's office was looking for volunteers. They call them COPs, the civilian officer police, civilians on patrol, excuse me. And I joined, and then a year later, Leesburg had the same program. So I never did patrol with the county, but I took the classes. And then Leesburg took me, because I lived in Leesburg. I lived in Legacy for 8 years. And I'm there with them 11 years already. And this was a 10-year certificate plaque that I got working with them. So a little proud of that too. Now the comedy, I started when I was 64 and a half on a whim. My daughter, my oldest daughter, said, "Dad, you're funny. Why don't you do some comedy?" And I was a shy person as far as that.
Yeah.
I mean, karaoke now I do, but I wouldn't even, when I first started karaoke, I'd hide behind the door and I'd sing. I didn't like singing in front of
You
people.
know, when I first started doing karaoke, I went by the name of George. And everybody, after a while, people said, well, your name's not George. Why do you do that?
Yeah.
I says, well, people don't know me. They say, George sucks.
Yeah.
You know, it ain't going to bother me.
So my older daughters pushed me, and I went to a class in Orlando, got to know all the comedians. And next thing you know, a year later, I'm on stage. And I was all the improvs in Florida, I worked. I worked some comedy clubs in Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, and Delaware. My goal is to go out in California. I got some comedy friends out there in Arizona, but I do it sparingly now. I did produce 4 comedy shows.
Oh, wow.
2 in Mount Dora, and there was 2 in Leesburg.
So America's Got Talent. What do you think?
No, not that good. No.
Not that good?
I worked with one of the America's Got Talent guys, Tom Cotta. I think he came in 2nd place one year. And what's his name? It's Josh, I forget his name, I'm bad with names. He was on AGT. He came in 5th place about 3 years ago.
Yeah. I think we're about running out of time. But Andy, I want to thank you for coming on the show. And since you're working as a comedian, you got to give me a nice little joke here.
Wow.
Put you on the spot.
You put me on the spot. I'll tell you one I wouldn't tell on stage, but when I do senior groups, I do this joke.
Well, you got to realize, too, everybody's going to be watching this.
Okay, so I'll tell you one joke from the stage, and then I'll tell you one senior joke that I don't tell on stage. So I asked a lot of people in the audience, you married? And I pick a few people out. How long you been married? Anybody been married more than 35 years? Anybody been married more than 40 years? So I tell them I've been happily married for 42 years.
Good.
21 to my first wife and 21 to the second. Okay. So the senior joke I tell is this guy comes home and tells his wife, I'm going to give up golfing. So she says, why do you want to give up golfing? He says, I'm too old. I'm 90 years old. I can't even see where the ball's going. She says, I have an idea. My brother just came back from the doctor. He's 94 years old. And he's got 20/20 vision still. Why don't you go out golfing with him? He says, okay, I'll try it. They go out golfing, they hit the first ball. He asks his brother-in-law named Bob, he says, Bob, did you see the ball? I saw it, let's go, let's go. They get out there looking for the ball. So he says, I thought you saw it. He said, I saw it, but I just don't remember where I saw it.
Andy, I want to say a couple things.
Okay.
One is welcome home, brother.
Thank you. You
And
too.
thank you for coming on the show.
It's fun.
Yeah, we had a good time, and but it's time to say goodbye because
All right.
we can't do the comedy routine anymore.
doesn't-
Maybe if I ever get into another show kind of business where I do a variety show, I'll bring you in. And
Next time I set one up in Leesburg, I'll call you.
Okay. So anyway, it's time to say goodbye. I know you know how I do this. To all our veterans out there, our active military and their families, we salute you for all you do. Till next time.